The courtroom was too quiet. Not the kind of silence that comes with peace, but the kind that feels heavy, thick with judgment. Letitia James sat still at the defense table, her hands resting on a stack of notes she would never read. Across the room, reporters leaned forward, eyes locked on her face. Cameras flashed like lightning, but she did not flinch. Her lipstick was perfect, her jaw locked, her stare unbroken. She had been here before, just not in this seat. A month ago, she stood behind a podium, righteous and loud, promising the public that no one was above the law. Her voice had cut through headlines like a knife. "We will hold him accountable," she said, smiling as crowds applauded. That moment made her feel untouchable. Now she could barely breathe. The judge had not spoken yet. He adjusted his glasses and shuffled papers as if the weight of the entire nation rested on how he read his next line. To Letitia, every second felt like a punishment worse than the sentence she might face. Just weeks ago, she had the stage. She wore power like armor. Her speeches were clipped, fiery, calculated. She called herself a defender of truth. People believed her. She made them believe her. But something happened. Not all at once. Quietly, slowly, then all at once. Someone started asking questions. Documents surfaced. Tiny cracks in her public image turned into craters. The accusations she once hurled at others started circling her like vultures. The same laws she used to tear down her enemies were now closing in on her like a cage. This was not just a courtroom drama. This was not just another scandal. This was about a woman who climbed high, but forgot what the fall could feel like, and now she was falling. Long before the courtroom fell silent, Letitia James stood in front of cheering crowds, raised on the shoulders of praise. She was bold, fearless. Every speech she gave against Trump made headlines. She was not just a prosecutor. She was a symbol, a woman who challenged the old guard and walked out looking victorious. But behind that fire, there was something missing. Letitia never slowed down enough to build anything real. Her relationships were surface deep. Her friendships, mostly transactional. She lived for the spotlight. She did not just crave attention, she needed it. Applause became her fuel. Validation, her only form of intimacy. And then there was Karoline Leavitt. She did not chase cameras. She avoided interviews when she could. Her power came from silence, measured, exact. People in the West Wing trusted her because she spoke only when necessary. Every word carried weight. She looked young, but you learned quickly not to underestimate her. Karoline was the kind of woman who kept her pain close. Years of proving herself in rooms filled with older men had taught her not to show it. Not the doubt, not the exhaustion, not the loneliness. When their names first crossed in conversation, it meant nothing. Letitia was just another loud figure from the other side of the aisle. But things changed the moment a plain brown envelope slid across Karoline's desk. No return address, just her name typed in bold. Inside were copies of mortgage applications, tax filings, personal records. At first, it felt unreal. Letitia James, the same woman shouting about justice on live television, had filed paperwork that did not match up. A New York official claiming residency in Virginia, a signature here, a contradiction there. Karoline stared at the pages, her fingers resting. On the edges, she knew what this meant. It was not just a political problem. This was a legal one, and whether she wanted it or not, she was in it now. What began as curiosity turned into quiet obsession. Because this was no longer about headlines. It was about truth, and the one woman trying to bury it. Karoline sat at the far end of the table, her eyes fixed on the papers spread before her. Every sheet carried a signature. Every number told a story, and none of them matched. Letitia James had declared a townhouse in Arlington as her primary home. The same year, she signed off on documents affirming full-time residency in New York, a legal requirement for her office. Mortgage records showed one thing. Tax returns showed another. To most, it might have looked like a clerical issue. But to Karoline, it smelled like something worse. "Look at this," she said softly, sliding one form toward her aide. She listed this address to qualify for a lower mortgage rate, even though she never lived there. And that signature is 3 weeks after she made a public statement swearing she lived in Brooklyn. The silence in the room grew sharper. Nobody needed to say it. This was not just about numbers anymore. Digging deeper, Karoline's team found a second property. A 5-unit building listed as 4. The loan tied to it came with benefits only available to smaller units. Another technicality. Another lie. But the one detail that made her stomach turn was personal. A tax return from 2 years ago listed Letitia as married. The spouse's name, John James. Her father. Karoline read it twice, then again. "No way this was a mistake," she whispered. "No one checks that box by accident." Meanwhile, Letitia felt the walls shift, even if she would not admit it. Anonymous emails started hitting her office. No threats, no demands, just screenshots, attachments. Quiet reminders that someone was watching. Reporters began circling without making noise. A journalist from Politico sent a request for comment about her residency filings. A national paper followed hours later. Letitia's response was firm but shallow. "This is nothing more than a distraction from the real work I do." But it was not working. Her team felt it. So did she. Karoline moved without panic. She briefed the president's legal counsel. She asked for a review of federal filing inconsistencies. She requested a closed-door session with the Housing Authority's Compliance Division. Every move she made was legal and lethal. Then it happened. An outlet leaked part of the file, redacted but real. The headline spread across social media. Like gasoline hitting fire. 2 states. 1 fraud? Karoline did not speak to the press. She did not need to. The story had started breathing on its own, and Letitia was finally starting to choke on it. Letitia entered the chamber dressed in sharp black from collar to heel. Her walk was measured, not rushed. The same steps she had taken into countless courtrooms and podiums before. But this time, her hands felt colder. Her spine straighter than usual, as if holding herself together was all she could do. She sat down without looking to either side. Behind her, the room buzzed with quiet anticipation. Journalists filled every row. Lawyers whispered in tight circles. Political allies who once praised her now avoided eye contact. Karoline watched her from across the room, arms folded, still waiting. The chair banged the gavel. The hearing began. Karoline rose slowly. She did not clear her throat. She did not need to. Her voice was even, direct. "Miss James, can you confirm for the record the address you listed as your primary residence on your 2022 federal tax return?" Letitia blinked once. "That information has already been reviewed. My team—" Karoline cut her off. Calm but firm. "I am not asking about your legal team. I am asking if you personally stand by that submission." Letitia shifted. "I travel between states often. My work is not always confined by location." Karoline did not react. She just opened a folder and held up a copy of the return. "This form lists your father as your spouse. Signed. Filed. 3 years in a row." A murmur broke through the room. Letitia stared at the paper without speaking. "Was that travel-related, too?" Karoline asked. Letitia leaned forward, her tone sharper now. "That was a clerical error. These things happen. Accountants sometimes pre-fill forms." Karoline nodded like she had heard that excuse before. She stepped back as the screen behind her lit up. A video played. Letitia from 2028 standing on stage. "Even one lie to a financial institution is enough for prosecution." The screen went dark. No one clapped, no one spoke. Karoline turned toward the witness table. "Bill P., Director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency. You reviewed these documents." The man stood, straight back, silver hair, a voice steady as stone. "Yes, and let me be clear. We have prosecuted individuals for less. Residency fraud, mortgage misrepresentation. These are not technical errors. These are choices." Karoline let that hang. She reached for the final document. A printed quote from Letitia's own legal complaint against Donald Trump. It detailed how misreporting one's state of residence for tax or legal advantage was, in her own words, a clear violation of public trust. She read it aloud, slowly. Then she looked up. Letitia's eyes flickered. It was not rage, not defiance. It was something quieter, something more human. "This was never supposed to happen like this," she whispered. "No." One moved. Even Karoline stayed still. Letitia's voice barely reached the microphone. "I tried to fight them. I really believed I was the one doing the right thing." She stared at her own hands as if seeing them for the first time. "I lost control, and in that moment, the mask she wore for years, of power, of righteousness, of moral high ground, slipped, not shattered, just gone." The hearing ended, but the damage did not. Within 24 hours, the Department of Justice made it official. A formal investigation was underway. Letitia's passport was seized, her accounts frozen, travel restricted. No charges had been filed yet, but no one believed she was walking away from this untouched. The people who once stood behind her now stood apart. A longtime Senate ally issued a flat press release calling the matter deeply concerning. Another simply said, "We are monitoring the situation." They used words that meant nothing, because silence would have meant guilt. Letitia stayed hidden. The woman who once smiled for every camera now moved like a shadow. Her legal team stopped taking interviews. A few resigned quietly. Others pretended they were never part of it. Her phone barely rang, and when it did, it was never good news. Her sister stopped posting family pictures. Her mother turned down all calls from reporters. Her father, listed once as a spouse on her tax return, checked into a private facility, citing stress. Meanwhile, Karoline remained steady. She declined every request for comment. No morning shows, no op-eds, not even a tweet. She walked to the podium just once. No emotion, no spin. "This is not about politics," she said. "This is about the Constitution." The room fell silent as her words landed. When asked if she felt vindicated, she gave a small nod, then added, "Justice should not change based on who you are, or who you claim to be." Then she stepped away. Letitia watched the clip alone, sitting in a dark room with no makeup, no audience, and no defense left. What took years to build, her legacy, her voice, her pride, was now slipping through her hands like dust. Because when your power comes from punishment, the moment you are accused, you become your own victim. Justice is meant to be blind, but the moment the person holding the scale lifts the blindfold, everything it stands for begins to rot. Letitia James built her career on chasing corruption, but somewhere along the way, she began to believe that the rules were for others. She used the law like a weapon, thinking it would never turn on her. But justice does not care about applause. It does not bend to ambition, and it does not forget. This real crime was not the false documents or the shady loans. The real crime was believing she could lie and still call it truth. Letitia James was not destroyed by her enemies. She was finished by her reflection.